Official title president, but known as a dictator, Porfirio Diaz ruled Mexico until 1911. Under Diaz, Mexico had economic growth due to his invitation of foreign oil field investors. Most Mexicans disagreed with foreigners taking their land, and disagreed with Diaz. Diaz resigned 36 years into his rule in the midst of rebellion.
Latin America showed vast nationalist pride in the early 1900s. The Constitution of 1917, passed by President Carranza, addressed many issues including nationalization, which is the government takeover of natural resources, giving women equal rights of those of men, and church land became the property of the nation. Having this constitution put in place, Latin America strengthened nationalist pride through politics and the government. After Carranza was overthrown in 1920, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, became the ruling power. The PRI demonstrated pride through the social classes by accommodating groups from high-ranked military personnel to peasants. This gave the people the feeling the government was trying to help them and achieve their goals, but in reality, it kept the groups under the government control, with the government holding all power. It was in the 1920s and 1930s the stability was being brought to the country and reforms were taking action. President Lorenzo Cardenas nationalized Mexico's oil resources, leaving Mexico feeling like they had at last conquered economic independence.
Starting in the 1930s, Mexicans were reclaiming oil fields to show their newfound nationalism. This started after the Mexican government started making reforms due to the newly drafted constitution. President Cardenas redistributed land back to peasants. The government also supported labor unions and set up schools and libraries to teach citizens how to read. As teachers taught reading and writing, they also spread ideas of nationalism. After arguments broke out between foreign petroleum field owners and Mexico, President Cardenas nationalized oil fields. This act showed Mexico was finally an independent nationalist country. During the Great Depression, Mexicans supported economic nationalism, or emphasis on home control of the economy. Factories were built, taxes were raised to protect what the factories were making on imports. People also had questions on the style of government Mexico had. Liberalism is a belief in a limited government and is a European idea. Some people thought it didn't work in Latin America. Different types of governments took over, as no one could decide which government would work the best.
Economic nationalism was not the only kind of nationalism to sweep through Latin America. Cultural nationalism was widespread, as artists such as Diego Rivera made murals to show the history and culture of Mexico. After World War I, British influence vanished from Latin America, though the United States continued to intervene if any conflicts arose. Examples of this included when Americans intervened in the Mexican Revolution and sided with pro-American Mexicans. Another is when the USA attacked Veracruz in 1914 after Mexico imprisoned USA sailors. In 1916, Pancho Villa killed dozens of people in New Mexico, which led to an invasion of Mexico. Finally, President Theodore Roosevelt put into place the Good Neighbor policy. It stated that the USA would lessen its interference with Mexico and other surrounding Latin American countries. Roosevelt also supported the nationalization of Mexican oil fields. Economic and cultural nationalism, as well as the Good Neighbor policy, strengthened Mexico and other Latin American countries' nationalism.
I want to thank everybody and anybody who ever had anything at all to do with the making of this picture.